Uh, so what you been doing, Dave?
Heat. Did heat last night, so that was and this morning. So I've been kind of and flew back from Boston.
How was the road?
You get nothing on the road that you don't get here. There's no access, no additional access here.
Yeah,
It's there's really no value to go traveling that I saw.
except for you
Uh,
can see things that I couldn't see. Like I couldn't see substitutions. I couldn't see, um,
yeah,
communication stuff on the field. I got to wait till Monday morning for coach's film. No, I
yeah.
got to wait till Tuesday morning for coach's film. But it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know that's important to you. To me, is it worth 3 days traveling to for
I agree.
it was you know
All right, give me a countdown and we'll rock. Welcome to week 2 of X's and Omar. I am Omar Kelly, Sun Sentinels, Dolphins, and NFL columnist. This is my twin, Dave Hyde. We color coordinated today so we can look like twins. Uh,
Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins. Omar, we're the perfect couple.
would you watch a remake of that?
No, I wouldn't. Well, I would if they cast it with us, Omar. I'd watch it. We could we're sports writing twins.
We can carry it. Okay. Well, the Dolphins began the season by taking one on the chin last Sunday, struggling with the physicality of the New England Patriots in a 21-11 loss. The Patriots continue to evolve and change, and now they've become a running team behind Cam Newton. Miami allowed 217 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground in the season opener, which shows that even though a year has changed, the Dolphins' issues might still remain the same. What was the good and what was the bad that you took from the season opener, Dave?
Well, to me, one of the big questions going into the game was the offensive line. And I'm not saying they won the battle against New England, but they didn't lose the game either. They weren't destroyed by New England. And New England's got a very good defensive line, very veteran. Everybody talked about Bill Belichick had to replace the 4 linebackers behind them, but that was a very good defensive line they faced. And again, I'm not saying they won the battle. Was it 27 carries, 87 yards? Not something to hang your hat on. But they gave up 1 sack, and they gave the rest of the team a chance to win the game. And so to me, that's hanging the hat. Did we want a negative too, Omar? The negatives, obviously,
Give me the
the
bad, Dave.
run defense. Sad, sad.
Listen, I have been hammering this question. My peers in the media contingent, they always make a big issue with this with me because the minute I start asking edge setting questions, you know where I'm going, you know what I'm hinting at. It's the 2,000 yards you've given up as a team in 4 of the last 5 years, including last year. Now, last year, you can make the excuse that it was talent and not necessarily scheme. Well, you didn't start out great against the Patriots. And yes, the Patriots have been a running team for quite a while now. Even when they had Tom Brady, they were a running team, but they shouldn't have been able to run down your throat as much as they were in the season opener. Let's just hope it was season opening jitters, Dave. Let's get to our first question, which comes from Will W. Will Miami's new coaches help the players improve more than last year?
Well, let's remember. I mean, last year the coaches did improve. You look at how awful they were in game one to them winning on the road against New England in week 17. So there was noticeable improvement from the team last year. We don't know with these coaches. This is a whole new offensive staff. Okay. And this isn't an attack at them. It's just that we don't know. We haven't seen them at work. And this is a tough year. Now, the disappointment to me in the game is Ryan Fitzpatrick sold Brian Flores on Changeli, and yet, and I'm not blaming the game on Fitzpatrick because we can get into the issues of playmakers later, but it didn't look comfortable. The offense, it didn't look like I was thinking, okay, Fitzpatrick's fit into an offense he knows, and that's going to be a great advantage for the Dolphins, and you didn't see that.
Well, let me say this. They had worked for 5 weeks on this offense outside of what they've been able to do in Zoom. While Ryan Fitzpatrick might know the offense, the players around him do not necessarily. And when you lose a key player like Devontae Parker, who I would assume would be your focal point for at least 10 plays a game, and you have to make the adjustments, and they've got Stephon Gilmore shadowing Preston Williams. These are some of the challenges that you had. If I would say this about Changeli and this coaching staff, I think they're better communicators than the past staff. As you know from doing a show with me all last season, I was not a fan at all of the Dolphins' offensive and defensive coordinators. I didn't think they were equipped or capable of doing the job, and still stand by that, even though the defensive coordinator is now running the Jets defense. But what I like about this unit is I feel like they're better teachers. And this is a young team. They're better communicators. This is a young team. And I think that as we discussed last week, I think we'll see them hit their stride at some point in the midseason. And that comes after guys learn and develop and blossom. But guys like Gerald Alexander and Robbie Brown, they're such great communicators. I think they're going to help a lot of these young players, including Tua, sort of get their game ready to be an NFL contributor. And we saw some of that in the opener with Brandon Jones and Myles Gaskin, two guys that nobody really expected to be main contributors. Well, they were main contributors.
You expected Myles Gaskin, Omar. I remember hearing you all August that he's having a good camp.
He was having a good camp. I didn't know that would make him the lead back now. I'm not going to take credit for that.
Well, that's to me, and I'm trying to see if we have that later in a question, but it's almost a little scary that they really don't have a lead back, right? They're looking for a lead back. And this gets into me the issue of playmakers that I saw Ryan Fitzpatrick trying to find anybody open, anybody they can give the ball to who can make a play. And as much as I talked about the offensive line and the defensive line and trying to bolster those in the offseason, I think we might end up this season talking about they need some playmakers.
Yeah, let's get to our second question because we brought up Myles Gaskin. This comes from Carroll City 86, one of my favorite because he's a Chief. What are the three things the team can build on from Sunday's loss going forward? Let me begin. You just addressed Myles Gaskin.
Sure.
The one thing that I've always liked about Brian Flores, and I say always like there's so many years, it's just been last year. If you practice well in practice, if you do well in practice, you will carve out a role for yourself in the game. And it doesn't matter who you are. You could be Chandler Cox, the fullback. If you practice well that week and they start to see that glow, you're going to get a role in that game. And that happened to Myles Gaskin. They gave him a little bit more of a role than they initially planned because the packages that he was in worked. And also, I will say this, I think the packages that he was in, which also featured Jakeem Grant, they had to use when Devontae Parker went down. That's one of the positive. Also, the offensive line. You addressed it. Man, I'm a trench guy, Dave. They did way better than I would have expected or anticipated. And I hope it's not beginner's luck. I hope it's that there isn't that much film on them. Austin Jackson, who I will openly admit I was not a fan of in the draft process. I did not think he was a top 20 talent in this draft to go at 18. Athletic, but very inconsistent in his film at USC. Could have been because of the procedure that he underwent to donate bone marrow to his sister. But, man, did he look athletic. And Solomon Kinley only got beat on a few plays. He was John Jerry-esque where he wasn't moving people, but he wasn't getting moved. So that was another positive.
Again, that's a good Patriots defensive line. And
You
everybody
say
talks
that.
like
I don't believe it.
you don't believe it. There was the number one defense last year, and they brought the whole line back. And they have some. Again, they're not huge stars, but you put them together. That's a good line. That's a good, and I have no doubt about it that that's
I
going to be
think
a
they're a
good line.
much better secondary than they are a good line. I think the secondary makes that line pretty good, and that's kind of what you saw. Nobody was open.
Well, that's what the Dolphins are hoping happens. That's what the Dolphins are hoping, right? The way they're built. So we'll see. Another guy did well, and you look at the stats, Brandon Jones, and I think it was a surprise almost, or quasi surprise he started. And then he had what did he end up with, Omar? 9 tackles, I
10
believe?
tackles.
10 tackles.
I think a lot of that, and listen to the coaches this week. A lot of that was package based. I think and this leads into a column that I wrote in today's Sun Sentinel, which this is going to be a season where we really realize whether or not Brian Flores can coach, because the Patriots made them stick to that package, their powered package, and made them play, and that forced Brandon Jones to be on the field a lot more than the Dolphins were comfortable with. Now, he played well. He was okay. He wasn't a liability, so.
To me, there was no surprise what the Patriots tried to do. They have a very good interior of the offensive line, as good as the Dolphins are going to see this year. And you throw in it now. Nobody thought Cam Newton was going to run 15 times. He's only run more once in his career than 15 times in 10 years in the league. So that was a surprise. But running the ball wasn't a surprise. And to your point, getting around the edge so easily as he did at times, that was a little shocking. Okay, Luke Fade wants to know, Omar, is the Patriots secondary that good, or the Dolphin receivers that bad at getting separation?
Well, when you've got to go, this offense is built on 2 big physical wide receivers in Devontae Parker and Preston Williams. Now, that means a lot of jump ball. That means a lot of one-on-one opportunities in press coverage. And then when you lose Devontae and Stephon Gilmore is covering Preston Williams, you're left with Jakeem Grant and Isaiah Ford to sort of carry the load of the passing game. And I don't think either player is ready. Jakeem has not shown that he's anything more than a gimmick player. And we're talking 5 years into his career, anything more than a return specialist and a gimmick player. Show me that he can be an NFL receiver that runs routes. Show me that he can be an NFL receiver that run blocks. I'm kind of iffy. And Isaiah Ford played half a season last year, and we still really don't know what he is or who he can be. So, do they have a need for receivers? I wrote only 2 columns about it going into training camp. So, my answer to that question is absolutely.
That was a theme. That was a theme you had, Omar.
I looked at it, it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, you saw what Gilmore did to Preston Williams too on that interception. He got physical and kind of shoved him out of the way a little for the interception. But look, that's what Preston. I thought he might be ready, not for Gilmore, but to step up in class.
He got eyes on Gilmore. Let's Gilmore's the best that he can go up against.
Absolutely. You didn't see much separation, to answer the question, for Fitzpatrick to throw the ball in very much. Okay. And how did they win last year? And you mentioned it. It was almost playground ball. You go deep, I'll throw you the ball. And that's fun. And it's, Devontae Parker was, had a huge year in that, Gesicki in the second half. But if you're talking NFL scripted offenses, that's not typically how you're going to win games. And they tried to script everything. And I didn't see Gesicki get open much at all in that game. And, so we go to 2 and see if the receivers are any better. And I'll throw the running backs in there too. I was stunned almost that Patrick Laird and Gaskin, by the second quarter they're in the game, and it was like last year, so and Gaskins take a step forward. Laird has a place, but you're playing 4 running backs, and none of them are really a huge threat, it looked like. All right, Omar. Where are we? Time to play your favorite game, true or false. Now everyone probably knows the premise if they were with us last year. You ask a question, we tell you the level of truth we'll assign to it. So let's start with Philip. Brian Flores' Miami Dolphins weren't prepared both mentally and physically for week one. True or false?
I would say that's false. I would say they were definitely prepared mentally because if you look at it, they weren't a penalty. They weren't filled with the game wasn't filled with penalties. I would say to you that scheme wise, I thought they didn't do a great job, but that pretty much was coaching. But it wasn't that they weren't prepared for it. I just think it was a bad game plan. And physically, you didn't see many missed tackles. So it's hard for me to sit here and say that, oh, they just, absolutely weren't prepared and they played sloppy ball. No, I just think they got out coached.
Yeah, see, I'd say it's true mentally from the standpoint nobody thought Cam Newton was going to run that much. Okay, and Flores alluded to it a little after the game. And look, it's week one in a season with no preseason. Cam Newton's coming in. You really don't know his level of health, much less the comfortability they have with him running the ball. And they took advantage of that. And there's a reason the Dolphins weren't prepared for it. They're going to have all week to work on it. Josh Allen's coming in, another running quarterback. I would think they're very prepared for a quarterback running this week.
Our second question comes from Kyle during True or False. True or False? Jerome Baker will finally have a breakout season and lead the team in sacks.
Well, you saw it a couple times. Once for sure that I remember in the game where he did get through on a sack, but I don't. I think they want to use him that way, but I don't see it. Haven't seen it enough. You saw it in preseason last year, right? Okay,
I saw it in training camp. I'm going with true. Jerome Baker, he showed you 16 tackles, a sack, forced fumble in his first game. He showed you, I think you're seeing a young player who's now in his third season and he's playing faster. He's more decisive. And I saw it in training camp last year, and I didn't even know he had this skill set. He was an amazing blitzer. I mean, he must have gotten 2 sacks per practice, just timing things and blitzing. And that's nothing I've ever seen in a Dolphins uniform since I've been covering the team. I've never seen a linebacker time things so well to get into the backfield. And that's what this defense is built on. So if he's your best blitzer, I want to see him coming forward more often.
Yeah, 16 tackles that's a measure of where he's come. He also, and he talked about this after the game, he had 2 personal fouls on really the drive that cemented the game for New England. So that's something to clean up. But certainly over a year ago, and he came out. He was the guy that Brian Flores, even before any practices, had tapped as the guy who's going to call defensive signals and is going to have a big role on the defense. So maybe after a year, he's a lot more comfortable in that role. Let's see, true or false? The run defense is way bigger issue than Ryan Fitzpatrick's 3 interception performance.
I'm going to have to go with true on this one. And while Ryan Fitzpatrick himself said he can't have 3 interception games, I mean, you're just not going to survive many of those. I think if you see 2 more 3 interception games from Ryan Fitzpatrick, you're going to see Tua Tagovailoa the very next week. Tagovailoa. We've been getting reprimanded for how we've said his name. It's a tongueful. But Shaq Lawson, Emmanuel Ogbah, 2 big-time free agent additions for this team, AWOL in the season opener. I mean, I would say Shaq Lawson was the worst performer on that defense. I mean, that edge was not set. And I would expected a little bit more pressure from both of them. I think Shaq Lawson's going to have a huge opportunity coming into this week. He was a former Buffalo Bills. He knows Josh Allen. He knows the strengths and weaknesses of that offensive line. If he doesn't show you that he is a difference-making player, probably got to put him in the money wasted category.
Well, let's face it, the Bills know Shaq Lawson too. So, I mean, that knowledge goes both ways in a game like this. Look, the Dolphins were trolling for pass rushers this offseason. They hope they picked up 3 or 4 and hope they get 1 or 2 out of it, right? So, um, but look, the run defense lost in that game, 217 yards, and they got manhandled at times. And one of the things they were trying to fix in the offseason was the run defense because it was such a problem. But I'm going to go with Ryan Fitzpatrick's 3 interception performance because when the defense gives up 21 points, your offense in today's NFL, that's a winnable game for you. Okay, and um, we know Ryan Fitzpatrick carried the team last year, and you expected something close to that. You're hoping for something close to that this year if you're the Dolphins. But I agree, and if he has a 3 interception performance this week, it's going to get very loud for Tua Tagovailoa to be coming out of the bullpen, and it'll be interesting to see. Brian Flores is not afraid of bold decisions or quick hooks or anything like that. It'll be interesting to see. He loves Fitzpatrick too, but it'll be interesting to see what his timeline for all this is.
Listen, after week 2 of last season, when they got blown out by the Patriots, that week of practice, nobody expected the quarterback change. And it wasn't like Josh Allen was tearing it up in practice. They just made the change. And I think it's a little early for Tua, but I can definitely see it coming. That leads us to our next question, which comes from Elite Tua. True or false? Tua would have played worse than Ryan Fitzpatrick if he got into that Patriots game.
Well, it's hard to say he would have played worse because what are we talking? 4 interceptions, which is possible. But to me, there's value at the start of the year and sitting the rookie quarterback on and letting him see for a week or 2 or 3, and then it becomes a decision to me if this keeps going. But there's value to me in having him sitting on and at least watching the speed, watching the what a real defense does, because there was no preseason at all. Joe Burrow had an up and down game, and he put him in position to win. But I think we're going to see Tua sooner rather than later this year. But I'm happy he sat week 1 on the bench.
I'll be happy if he sits the first month. To me, that's false. I've watched practices. It isn't even close. It's not a competition. As bad as you thought Ryan Fitzpatrick played against the Patriots, Tua would have absolutely looked worse. I think he's a better quarterback. Is he a more experienced quarterback? Absolutely not. Is he more seasoned? No. Does he have as much of a grasp of the offense as Ryan Fitzpatrick? Probably not. He's probably got about 30%. These coaches flat out tell you yesterday on our Zoom calls with them that he's not ready. He's learning. He's growing. We're getting more comfortable. We're getting comfortable with him, figuring out what he likes. They don't even know what he likes yet. It hasn't even been long enough to know what he likes, people. Like, calm down. They don't even know.
No. Let's not calm down. He's the savior. He was projected the guy who's going to come in and be the future. The question is, when is the future there? It's the coach's job in this abbreviated, truncated, weird season to find out what he does like and get him ready. Because
I'm not disagreeing with you, but can they have a month? Can they just have a month?
Maybe. Depends on. Look, if Fitzpatrick wins games, he's going to stay in there. If he loses games and plays like he did Sunday, it's going to be a issue, and rightfully so. That's how it's set up, right?
I think if this team begins the season 1-5, we're going to see Tua in Game 7.
It's going to be deafening for Tua if they're 1-5.
Yeah.
The next question comes from Sean Snoozer. This offense is not going to consist of a lot of deep shots downfield, and will focus more on slants and conservative game plans. That's the question. Will it do that?
I think it's false. I've seen deep shots. I've seen big throws. Ryan Fitzpatrick if he gets a one-on-one look, he's going to take it. That's the beauty of Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think they do have to scheme up things to get players like Jakeem Grant or Lynn Bowden Jr. in open space or downfield. Sometimes you got to build stuff up, and it'd be nice to see a running back catch a pass out the backfield or on a curl and actually not curl, but and actually wheel route and actually make people miss. That's one thing. Jakeem Grant was probably the only guy who made somebody miss last Sunday, and you gotta get at least three chunk plays from some of your playmakers. I mean, three plays of
Where,
16 or more yards.
where was Matt Breida in the game? I kept waiting and waiting and waiting. I thought he would be a guy coming out there and changing the tempo and things that the Dolphins could do, and we didn't see it in game one.
I know people who have a lot of praise for Matt Breida. I know he's been praised as a hard worker, one of the hardest workers in 49ers organization before he left. But I will be honest and candid with you. I didn't see anything in training camp. And
Yeah.
if I didn't see anything in training camp, the coaches probably didn't see anything in training camp. And you got to play the guys who are making the plays. And I'm sure he's going to work hard and push. Maybe he's got something. I dog Byron Jones all training camp because he looked like poo. And come to find out, the man's got a hamstring issue. Or I forget what he's got a quadriceps issue, Achilles issue. There you go. That's the right injury. And he's just struggling to make it. We don't know what's up with Matt Breida, but he definitely is needed to make plays. I mean, this is allegedly the fastest man in the NFL.
You look at what he did in San Francisco. You can see the Dolphins need that, right? You look at Sunday, they're looking for somebody to give a spark, whether it's a receiver, a tight end, or a running back, and didn't see it. Okay, Jacob has the next one. True or false? Chan Gailey's offense is too simple and predictable.
I don't agree with that. I mean, Chan Gailey is the one NFL coach who is viewed as the innovator for bringing spread concepts to the NFL. I mean, that is on his resume. So how could he be simple? And I disagree with that. While certainly he ran a very vanilla offense when he was the Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator. That's not necessarily what he's running in his background with the Cowboys or calling plays for the for the Chiefs or the Steelers or the Jets. I think right now it's a matter of they need time to get comfortable and familiar with the players around them. People have to realize they've had 5 weeks with these players. 5 weeks, and one of them included you creating a game plan, and a game plan built around Devontae Parker, who wasn't on the field for half the game.
Yeah, I think that's the issue, really. When you look around the league at what teams are doing, and they aren't given their playbook. They're using a page here and a page there from the playbook because you can't overload when you have and it's not just 5. They had 5 weeks, but they were, the number of padded practices and practices are actually playing football. Probably, what was it, Omar? A week when you boil it all down. So, come back in a month, and if it's still simple, it looks simple, then we have an issue. But I think that's what you said is exactly it. That every offense right now is simple and predictable because of the truncated offseason.
Yeah. Well, here's a difficult truth that Dolphin fans need to digest about this Dolphins-Bills rivalry that we've had the past few seasons. It hasn't been much of a rivalry, Dave. The Bills have won 3 of the last 4, and the lone victory came on that end-of-game pass in the end zone that Charles Clay dropped from Josh Allen and gift-wrapped the victory for Miami. That's the only time the Dolphins have beaten Josh Allen in 2 years. Miami has actually lost 5 of the last 6 games against Buffalo, and Josh Allen has annually delivered one of his best performances of the season against the Miami Dolphins. Should the Dolphins be scared of Josh Allen and what Buffalo's building, Dave?
Well, Josh Allen, the book on him is pretty obvious, okay? He has trouble throwing the ball downfield, and he likes to run the ball. Short passes, he's accurate, fairly accurate on anything over 20 yards. His completion percentage is, I think it's around 20% or something like that. And so you got a book on him now. and yet you're right. This isn't a rivalry to me anymore. A rivalry needs consequence. There's the only consequence these two teams have had is who's going to be the first one out of to step on the Jets and try to prop themselves up to second place in the AFC East. Now the Bills have legitimate title contender or AFC East contender this year, and so Josh Allen. It all depends on Josh Allen though, and so I'm fascinated to see. One of the great tenets of quarterbacking is you can't make them more accurate. Um, as whatever they are out of college, accuracy wise, they're going to be that in the pros. And if that's the case, the Bills are, building a shaky foundation with Josh Allen because he hasn't been accurate. Can he change? He had 112 yards passing last week. That's his career high. He had 57 yards rushing on 15 carries, same as Cam Newton. A lot of carries for a quarterback. So you know what you're facing with them, and the question becomes, can the Dolphins stop it?
Here's my concern about the Buffalo Bills. I would argue to you that they have the best receiver unit in the AFC East, but not just the AFC East, arguably one of the best receiver units in all of the NFL. Stephon Diggs, big fan over here. John Brown, big fan over here. Big a guy, and those are one guy's a big physical possession receiver who can do it all. The other guy's a guy who stretches the field, and then you got Cole Beasley working the slot. You name me a better trio. Maybe the Cleveland Browns have a better trio, but they're pretty good. The Dolphins have the highest paid cornerback unit in the NFL, in Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, who neither of which are healthy. How concerned, Dave, are you that Miami's secondary might struggle against Buffalo?
I'm not concerned about that because if you're going to get concerned when your whole defense is built around secondary, if that becomes a problem, you got major problems then. My concern goes back to last Sunday. Buffalo looked at the same tape everybody else saw, and they can go physical too. And if they want to run the ball again with Josh Allen and some some okay running backs who have had big games behind a physical offensive line. I think that's what they're going to come out and try. Probably spread the defense, at times throw it, but why attack the strength of the Dolphins defense until you've tested what is shown to be the underbelly of the Dolphins defense and see if they can stop the run?
I'm actually going the absolute opposite route. I'm making this secondary show me that they can actually play. And once I soften you up with the pass, then I'll hit you with the run game. I'll ram it down your throat. But yeah,
well, I wouldn't do that. The other reason, there's two home field advantages in the NFL right now. One's Denver because of the air, and that always be. The second is South Florida in September and October. And if I'm Buffalo, I'm doing everything I can to shorten the game. And how do you shorten the game? You run the ball, or possession receivers. But I'm not winging the ball all over. Especially, I'm trying to get sort of what New England did. They had almost 35 minutes of possession against the Dolphins and wear them down that one.
John Wright has a question for us. Do you think it helps that they have Josh Allen next week, or too soon to fix the problems? Allen and Cam Newton are similar quarterbacks with similar skill sets, but they're used different. Too soon to fix everything? Or you like the fact that
this is perfect. This is perfect. You have one. Look, Cam Newton's 6'5", 243, I believe, and Josh Allen is 6'5", 237. Similar size quarterbacks, very big, very powerful. They both ran for 15 times last week. Newton for 75 yards, Josh Allen for 57 yards. They like to run the ball, and they're almost to a fault. I think 15 times. That's a lot for a quarterback. Okay, they're going to get hurt at some point, but yes, now you have you not only showed that you weren't ready to do it last week against Cam Newton. Now you get to prepare for it again, and you get to correct the mistakes while they're fresh. I think it's a good setup for the Dolphins in that respect.
Ghost of Marino has our next question. Considering Buffalo can execute a similar game plan, What adjustments can be made schematically and personnel-wise to stop the run?
Well, you saw Omar what they did at New England in the second. They brought 10 guys up to the line and said, "Go ahead, pass the ball because we're going to play the run at time. Sell out completely on the run." Um, you know, we can talk schemes and everything and all that, but to me, and you mentioned Shaq Lawson and all and setting the edge. Somehow they got it. Whatever they're doing schematically isn't working there.
Well, let me throw a couple of things at you. For me, it would start with Kyle Van Noy. I'd move him around, especially with that hand issue in terms of what he's doing. Probably put him back there with Jerome Baker. Landon Roberts didn't miss practice today, so that's something that's there. I would love to see Zach Sealer in that mix for defensive tackles. I think you saw Christian Wilkins start to play a little bit better because there's now a defensive tackle rotation. But right now, I would start this game with Raekwon Davis above the center as a nose tackle, and then put Gottschall and Wilkins next to him, a 3 defensive tackle front, and then have Lawson and Ogba and Kyle Van Noy roaming around there with Jerome Baker. I think you're going to have to show people that you can get big. If they get big, you get big too. And I really don't think that Miami's big package, it was suitable. I really don't think they looked good in a 5-2 scheme, and they need to.
They do enough this offseason, Omar?
Yeah, I can't. I mean, other than signing a clear-cut pass rusher like a Cameron Wake, I really can't. And Cameron's not going to help you against the run. I really can't tell you anything else that they needed to do. I think the talent is there at defensive tackle. My question is linebacker. Right now, the first game made me really reconsider whether they should have gotten rid of Raekwon McMillan. It made me second guess that decision because Landon Roberts was AWOL.
Yeah, I tell you, I think any linebacker is going to have problems playing behind that defensive line when they're getting shredded like that. I just think the New England's blockers were constantly getting on the linebackers, and I really didn't. I just saw them up front; they were getting manhandled too often. So can Buffalo do that? Buffalo has had physical lines now, and I didn't see the game. Jets, but they're up 21-0, and so I'm curious to see if they can play as physical as they have in the past couple years. I think we're going to see that, and we'll see how the Dolphins stand up to it.
Our final question comes from Fins for Life. Should the Dolphins start loading the box and leaning more on the well-paid talent in the secondary?
Yeah, I think that's what you just said. Basically, when you're going to play 3 big defensive linemen in the middle and set it up. Now I'll let you handle this because the Bills receivers going one-on-one is probably what they want too.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the week for it, and especially Xavier Howard and Byron Jones did not get tested by the Patriots. I don't know if that's because they don't have very good receivers outside of Julian Edelman. They pretty much got nothing on that roster. But this is not the week to do that. I think you as a resort of last resort, maybe you go that route. But you got to be able to stop them in your base. And these backs aren't established. The real big key is to have a spy on Josh Allen. Who that spy will be, I have absolutely no idea because really I need Jerome Baker to do what he does, which is blitz and cover. So, you got to find somebody to step up and be that spy.
And he's got to be big. I mean, he's got to be able to. I would think, you put a safety on him. I would guess, right? I'm curious to see how they're going to handle this.
They got to figure out the road now that Brandon Jones is the guy who's strong safety in the box. So, hey, maybe, and also. Let me throw this out there. I didn't think Jamal Perry, their nickel cornerback, played well. And, that's a position where if you continue to put bad film out there, teams are going to attack you. So I would love to see maybe an Xavier go inside the slot and a Nick Needham be on the boundary. You got to get creative, because right now, if you're looking at weaknesses on this team, it's inside linebacker where Landon Roberts is, Shaq Lawson where the edge going against the left tackle, and then Jamal Perry, the nickel cornerback. If I'm
Yeah.
the Buffalo Bills, I'm attacking all three players.
Yeah, okay, but let's face it, Edelman has made a career of making slot cornerbacks look bad, right? So
That's and he's old too,
I,
man. I didn't realize how old he was. He outran everybody on their defense.
yeah, right, yeah. Um, I tell you, it was weird seeing New England without Tom Brady. Okay, and what's more, it was even weirder they didn't miss Tom Brady in that game. So, maybe Belichick's got it up and running again this year. We'll see. It's a little early for that. All right, prediction time, Omar. Let's see what you got. Who you got, Bills or Dolphins?
I am going with Buffalo. I have just seen this matchup not go well for the Dolphins, either home or on the road. It doesn't matter. I'm not a Josh Allen fan, but I am a fan of these receivers, and I think that they're going to do enough to deliver a 21-17 victory for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep the faith in that wasn't the Dolphins' vision. I'm for another week, and you pair that with what I think is, again, I mentioned earlier, the home field advantage of this sauna in September, and teams are just not ready for that. We see it year after year, so you throw those two components in, and we talk about the Dolphins' problems and all that. Buffalo's got some serious injury problems at linebacker. They're two good young linebackers went out of the game, and so if we have to monitor that to see, just where it is this week. But the fact they went out of the game and didn't return, there's two of their top three players on defense, and if they're missing those, that's a huge advantage for the Dolphins. So I'm going 24-20 for the Dolphins.
Well, thank you for watching X's and Omar. This is Omar Kelly and Dave Hyde. We always appreciate those who come out and watch us live on Wednesday, or anybody who clicks on the show when we send it out a little bit later in the day and throughout the week. And also, if you want to check out the X's and Omar podcast, it is on the Apple Stream or any place that you generally find podcasts. You can search X's and Omar. Well, Dave,
we've got that podcast thing figured out, Omar?
Yeah, we got it figured out. I don't know if it's loading on your phone automatically, but it's there. And we get it up on the Sun Sentinel site within hours of the show finishing. So always appreciate everybody who comes. See you next week as we prepare you for Thursday night game against the Jacksonville Jaguars.